Okay, I'm Andy Watts. I'll call the Select Board meeting for Monday, June 21st, 2021 to order. Any agenda additions or changes from staff today?
None tonight.
None tonight. Okay, thank you. Any changes or requests from board members? Okay. Seeing none, then we don't have to approve any changes. So moving on to public to be heard. This is a point in the meeting where the public is invited to speak to the board on items that are not on the agenda. The intent is to cover town business in this discussion. So comments should be directed to myself as chair. And please keep any comments that you have civil and avoid making comments about other members of the public, and expect to only speak once. This is our first go at this hybrid situation where some are participating live and some are remote. We do have the entire select board here in the room with us. So it's I guess the second time in recent history that we've been together. So it's and we may have some kinks to work through here. Please be patient. We'll try to get through. So if you'd like to speak during public to be heard, as in past meetings, please raise your hand in the Teams application or comment in the chat. If you're dialed in on the phone, we'll give you an opportunity to speak as well at the appropriate point. So at this time, I'm seeing Gabrielle Smith's hand up. So Gabrielle, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Andy. I just want to thank you all for working through this hybridization, but the view is a little odd. I'm seeing mostly members of the public and Andy Watts twice, and it would be great to have be able to see the select board members view better. That's one tile I have, and the others are other members of the public who have their cameras on, and Andy's on here twice. So maybe if we could, I don't know, just commenting that it would be lovely to have a better view of the select board members. Thank you. But understandably, I appreciate you all are doing the best you can. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Gabrielle. Not all select board members have actually logged into the meeting because we're here in the room. There should be a view that shows the group. Maybe not.
There is. It's going to be small though, just because
it's
tile it. I'm wondering if members of the public aren't speaking. If they could turn off their cameras, then that's going to make.
Oh, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There are also a number of members of the public that are unmuted, so maybe that may help.
Gabrielle, is that why you were raising your hand?
Excuse me?
Gabrielle, this is Evan. Is that why you were raising your hand to speak?
I was raising my hand to speak for the reason I already spoke, Evan. I was just commenting on. And now I see Andy twice and I can't see anyone else in the room.
Everybody's turned their cameras off.
That's right. If I could just, maybe I have one camera that we could see all of you who are there, all the select board members would be great.
So there is a camera in the room that I think is tracking toward the person that's speaking, and so I think that may be why I'm showing up because I'm logged in, but then it's also maybe not. It's showing Greg and Evan now.
Gabrielle, and for those at home who are trying to come in through Teams, if you try right-clicking on the town meeting TV presenters, if you try right-clicking on that and pin them, or I'm sorry, it's called Essex Meeting Room. Right-click and pin that, and that should be, they'll be tracking the speakers and showing the room. So that might hopefully be another option that could work well.
Greg,
you don't have to come in through your own
I actually
camera.
just spotlighted the Essex meeting room,
Oh.
so
We'll
I'll,
always pan over to
I'm
the
on it.
Right. So the reason I do is so I can see people's hands up. Otherwise, I can't tell
You
who
don't have to
watches
have
this.
your camera on for that. No.
I do not. Okay.
Thanks, everybody, for bearing with us as we work out the kinks. This is our first night back.
Margaret Smith, that's her hand up.
And while we think the governor did a really great job on COVID, he really gave us no notice that he was changing this part of the law.
And Margaret Smith has her
Yep.
hand up.
Yep. I see Margaret Smith with your other hand up. Margaret, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I want to congratulate you all for getting back together. And my question is just, is everyone in the room required to be vaccinated?
We are going with the governor's orders that the restrictions have been lifted because Vermont has reached its 80% vaccination status with at least one shot. And so we are not checking vaccination status. We are not requiring masks. That is in accordance with the state guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Any other comments from the public? Okay, just a second. I'm just going to scroll down here. Okay, Irene, do you want to come up to the microphone? I think you may have to come to the microphone to be heard.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be back. Also, it was terrific to attend the Juneteenth celebration on Saturday. Thanks to all the staff and community members who worked so hard to put that together. It was a 2-hour event, and I'm told it was planned in less than a month. Truly amazing. As a baby boomer, there's a lot that I learned on Saturday that I never encountered in school. So it's a really important event, and I'm glad that a lot of people in this room were there. There's a short video clip that Ken Signorello has put together. You can find it on the Essex Retorter with a T Facebook page, and it'll soon be posted on our website as well. It's just a 3-minute compilation of some of the speakers. And finally, I wanted to address the fact that the person I'm aware that planned it was Owiso Makuku. She is currently the interim community development director, and I'd like to know when she will be granted or whether someone else will be hired as the regular community development director now that merger has failed. We were told that was on hold until merger happened or the vote was done, and now we've had 2 done votes. So I'd like to see that title of community development director awarded to her if she's deserving, or someone else, but the town deserves a community development director full-time and permanently. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Irene. Any other?
We have Patty.
Patty Davis. Patty, go ahead and unmute yourself. Patty's hand has gone down. Oh, back up. Here she comes. Patty, you're muted still. Patty, your hand is going up and down, but you're still muted. Patty, do you want to speak? Seems to be having difficulty.
Can she communicate in the chat?
Patty, do you have a question that you could post into the chat? Okay, I guess we can't wait indefinitely here. Patty, if you resolve your issues, raise your hand again at a later point. Okay, I don't see any other hands, and I don't see anybody on the phone. Well, there's a button that says see more. Oh, okay. Okay, I guess see no other hands. Patty, again, if you resolve your muting issue, raise your hand again. We'll try to squeeze you in some point. Okay, moving on to business item 5A. Consider approval of reappointment of John Mangan to Planning Commission. Any introduction from staff or?
John Mangan is a planning commissioner. His term is coming to an end at the end of this month on June 30th. He is interested in being reappointed. There's a letter of support in your packet from the planning commission chair, Dustin Brusso, who is here tonight. Yeah, we recommended that John come to the select board meeting tonight to do a little interview and tell you why he's interested in being reappointed and chance for you to ask any questions that you might have.
Okay. Any questions from select board members? Go ahead, Pat.
John,
This is weird. This is weird.
Yeah,
In-person
right.
hand raising.
John, would you mind telling us a little bit about your experience on the commission so far?
Sure.
Want to continue on with it?
Yeah, so no problem. So, yeah, so I've been doing it for 4 years now, and, you know, coming up on my term expiration, you know, initially I was thinking I was going to pass on renewal, but after talking it through a bit with Dustin, he made some good points, not, you know, just putting out there that I come to realize, you know, I've learned a lot in the past 4 years, which was my goal in being on the commission, to be more aware of what's going on in the town and to learn more about the regulations and how things get approved and whatnot. And over the past 4 years, I mean, I think we have a really good team that we're working together with. Everybody brings something different to the table, and I've learned a lot from all of them. And, you know, it would be unfortunate, I think, to leave at this point in time, I guess, now that I'm just starting to get, I guess, seasoned in the planning commission matters. And, you know, I'm able to contribute now a lot more than I was when I first started. So that's why I want to continue. Yep.
Questions? So, you're reading?
John, what do you think's going well?
In terms of going well, being as part of the planning commission, I think, as I mentioned, you know, the commission we have now, we have a lot of different people from various walks of life. You know, we have Dave Raffaello who's in real estate. We have, you know, Tom, you know, he's in IT and computers, but he obviously knows regulations inside and out. I've learned a ton from both of those guys. John Alden, you know, an architect. There's just so many people that offer different views of everything. Myself, I bring IT and regulatory to the table as well. So, you know, from a technology standpoint and different aspects of quality and regulatory is my day-to-day job. It seems like we're all able to contribute in our own way that's helpful for everybody. So we're always, you know, as we go around our table, a lot of times with comments, by the time we get fully around the table, you know, people either change their mind on some things possibly, or it just solidifies their decision because it's just, we've all gelled really well together.
Interactions with staff or the you know, we have a town plan that we're working with. Any things to highlight there? Any concerns or?
No, you know, it was a long process with our, you know, our ETC Next plan, but it's been fantastic working with staff. You know, they've been nothing but professional, very helpful, supportive, when we have questions, we go directly to staff and they get back to us instantly. You know, the reports they put together for us in advance are great, and you know, they're always willing to hear us and take whatever, you know, whatever comment we have and incorporate it. And you know, Darren and Sharon and Wiso, you know, their experience too, you know, I've learned from all of them. So it's been a great experience working with the existing staff.
Okay, great. Don, go ahead.
Is there any aspect of the planning commission or what you do that you'd like to see changed?
Regulations, the regulations we're currently working with, there are some challenges, and that's part of why we're going through the ETC next plan and considering changes for the future. There are some areas that I think are too subjective today, you know. So when one planning commission, you know, if I were to leave and another commissioner come in, you know, the way things get approved, it's just there's I think everybody recognizes that, and we're doing the best we can with it right now. And there are plans to make it better. So that's what's key, I think, is that we're working to change and improvement. That's probably the biggest thing that I think needs improvement.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Did you take comments from the gallery? Yeah, I was gonna turn to you, Dustin. Anything you want to add?
So specifically, this is Dustin Brusso for the record. Specifically to the matter of John Mangan, I think he hit it on the head. As he's, you know, planning commission is not a quick fix. It's not a quick learn. You're not going to jump in and immediately be productive because there's so much to learn. There's so much domain knowledge with what is going on in Essex. I mean, Don predates me. I'll leave it at that.
Dustin.
And I think in John's case, he really has gotten to the level that he is, as he mentioned, he is starting to be, you know, a solid contributor. I don't mean that he never was, but there's a level of knowledge that you have to have before you have a confidence to jump in and start offering something that may be different than the other 5 or 6 people at the table. And John has that level of confidence right now, in my opinion. You know, when we were going through the ETC next, John stood up for items that he wanted or thought were appropriate. And, you know, it isn't a matter of being confrontational. It's a matter of being confident and being able to convey what you believe, what you feel is right, and so forth. And I think John does that well. I would not say he's a man of many words, but he's a man of few and concise words. So I wholeheartedly endorse him to remain on the commission. You know, and keep this ball rolling. The domain knowledge that he has going through the ETC next process, it would be a shame to lose that when we get into the actual phase of creating the regulations to support that plan. So, you know, everything that's been said was great. I appreciate John's, you know, commentary about the way things are firing. And I want just you guys to know that I believe he's a solid contributor and a good fit for the Essex Planning Commission. So,
Thanks.
Dustin. Good to see you. Dustin and I, full disclosure, Dustin and I have been friends for, I don't know how many years, 30 some years.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Greg.
John, you and I were talking a little bit as you were considering re-upping, and there was some talk you were thinking about maybe doing a 1-year term or requesting a 1-year term, or getting reappointed for the full term. Have you given more thought to that, that the select board should be aware of, or where you're coming at it? Yeah.
So originally, I mean, I guess my only question probably to the select board is what is in a commitment of, you know, full term? You know, it's obviously an unpaid position. And you know, is it just a matter of me, like if I were to leave, say at the 3-year mark, as long as I find a suitable, you know, a replacement that gets nominated onto the board to take my place, is that all there is in terms of commitment? Or, you know, there's obviously nothing legal in writing saying, oh, if you leave at the end of 2 years, you know, that was just the thing. I'm enjoying it and I want to continue it. It's just, you know, I have my own business, I have a day job and, you know, kids and whatnot. And I just don't, it was difficult for me to say, yeah, I'm committed to 4 years, 100%. And, you know, I'd like to be a man of my word. So when I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So, if 1 year were an option, that would have been great. But, again, after talking with Dustin and thinking through just I guess the fun I've had doing it, learning about the regulations, honestly, as I mentioned, my day job is in quality and regulatory as well, for ISO standards. So I'm used to reading through lengthy documents and really looking at those details. And so it seems like a good fit in that regard. So those are the things that, when I weigh the benefit of staying on for full 4-year term versus leaving and only because you would only let me do one, I think I'd rather commit to the 4 and stay on.
Yeah, so there's no way we can force you to stay on the commission. You're, as you mentioned, you're a volunteer. We are working toward offering stipends as an option starting, I think, in January of 2022, I believe. That's the goal. But no, we can't force you to stay.
Yeah. So, I'm a man of my word, and
Let's be clear, these stipends are not going to let you refinance
no,
anything.
it's
no, that's not the expectation. It's been a great learning experience, as I mentioned, and I do like to know what's going on in my community. So, I have 4 kids that have been through this school system. I still have 2 in it here. And I see a lot of the development goes on, and I like having a voice in that. So that's my interest in staying on. Yep.
Planning commissioners are 4 years.
Okay. Might want to look at the recommendation then.
Memo's got the wrong date in it.
So it is 4 then.
Yes.
Okay.
I think originally
Thank
we
you.
thought when we were talking back and forth, we thought it was 3, but I think toward the end of our conversation, we did agree that it was 4, and that's fine with me.
Commissions is unique. The only one I think that we do for 4.
Which is fine. I'm just
Yeah.
was reading that and I wasn't sure.
Vince, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, my only ask is, and this is just as a person, I guess, is like, if you're gonna leave or if something comes up and you can't make the commitment, just try to give as much notice as you can to help staff out.
Absolutely.
To get them to post the position and try to find a replacement. That's all I ask.
Absolutely. And when I first started talking about this with Sharon, that was what I said to her, is that, I'm in no rush to leave the commission. When I first talked about not renewing, or that was us considering that, I told her I'm in no rush. I don't mind staying on until they're able to find a replacement. And that's exactly how I would leave it if I ever had to leave, So again, I love the team that I'm working with currently. A couple of them I'm friends with, so I would never just leave on them and leave things hanging.
Much appreciated.
Dustin, you want to make another comment?
I wanted to make one more, and I think, John, this applies to John as well. But since the select board, saw fit to appoint an alternate to the planning commission, we now have a knowledgeable individual to help relieve some of the pressure. The 7 members that are there are knowledgeable, and everybody feels committed to being there. But if there's an occasion that somebody can't be there, we now have an alternate, so we can still keep a 7-member board much of the time. So I think that's a pressure release that you provided to us that is still there and is still in place, and it gives us some backup for the individuals, whether somebody has to be on vacation or their own business is up and running and they have to do something different. We're not incapacitated, and it's not somebody coming in cold either. The alternate is part of the discussions and part of the process, so everybody is up to speed, and I think that has helped a lot over the last year and however long we've had this in place. 2 years, year and a half. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and when I was talking with John, that was one of the points. Nobody should feel pressured to be at a meeting, especially now that we have some backup.
Right.
So that was it. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Dustin. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Any other board member comments? So John, we will go into executive session later in the meeting, and we'll have a discussion, and staff will let you know probably tomorrow what our decision is. So thank you so much.
That sounds great.
For coming forward, and thank you for your past service, and we'll let you know.
No problem. Thank you very much. Everyone have a great night.
Okay, moving on to business item 5B, consider approval of slip lining of stormwater pipes on Sand Hill Road.
We have Aaron Martin from Public Works tonight.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Wish I was there with you if I'd known. Be right there in that seat, the hot seat. Tonight, we're here before you to, the issue is whether the select board will authorize Public Works to contract with Green Mountain Pipeline Services to do slip lining of storm lines on Lower Sand Hill, a portion of it. And to utilize any end of year funds from the Public Works Administration accounts, highway and stormwater accounts to assist offsetting some of these costs here in FYE 22. Back last fall, in preparation for our summer construction projects here this summer, we usually go through and do an initial site assessment of the infrastructure. And Lower Sand Hill Road, that portion between Greenbrier and Vermont 117 was slated to be overlaid with pavement this year. So we do a comprehensive study of all the infrastructure. We assess the storm catch basins, and we had some TVing done of the storm lines in that section of Sand Hill. And what we found was some severe deterioration of the storm lines in that area. We've contracted with Green Mountain Pipeline a couple other times. They actually did some slip lining for us a few years back on the upper part of Sand Hill. They do great work, and got a quote from them. Well, sent them the videos. They took a look at it, and they gave us a quote of $109,575. This is a substantial figure, being that our maintenance budget for stormwater infrastructure for next fiscal year is $108,500. If we were to go forth with doing this work, it deplete that account with one project. I talked with Corey over at Green Mountain today. They can get us in the schedule, but it's not going to be until late summer, early fall timeframe. He did say that they could squeeze us in. Openings do come up this summer. They would allow that, and try to get a crew up here to do the work. Part of the cost associated with that is, like I said previously, was to utilize some of the existing funding that we are going to have left over from in our budget this year. We tried to quantify that. It's kind of too early to get an exact number for you folks, but we're looking at around $80,000 to $100,000 additional funds that we would have left over in the Public Works budget. And we would like those reallocated and either placed into the capital stormwater account and earmark this specific project for those funds, and or have the board dedicate these funds for this specific project to be spent this fall when we do complete the work. Going to leave it open to questions, comments. There is a recommendation there. I could read through that, or
for Greg and Evan, but would this fall under something we could use the ARPA dollars for? I mean, water, stormwater, it seems like that might be another avenue to explore. I'm not sure if that was given any consideration before assigning. I mean, I realize that if we have the surplus, then okay, use it, but if there's a gap there, seems like that.
Potentially, but these are the funds that we normally do. We're kind of looking at those funds to do something we wouldn't normally have the funds to do. So the answer is yes, but it's probably something that as we go through the process of what to do with that money, this is something that's really sort of needed to do sooner.
Okay.
I was going to ask Aaron a question, but I'll wait for the rest of the board to ask your questions.
I actually have the same question.
Any other questions? So this is in the way I'm looking at this is a pre-assignment of potential fund balance, right? Yeah.
Aaron, talk to a little bit about these stormwater lines and the slip lining. What is happening in that line, and what are the consequences of not fixing it in a timely manner?
Yeah. Well, currently we have quite a bit of stormwater infrastructure that was installed back in early to late 70s, early 80s. And the pipe material of choice back then was corrugated metal, either steel or aluminum. Some of it's coated, some of it's not. Just through galvanic actions in the soil and over time, a lot of this pipe has corroded. And it usually corrodes at the flow line in the invert of the pipe. Structurally, it'll eventually lead to cave-ins, especially those pipes that are in the road. During a lot of heavy storm events, flow events, what we find is we're chasing sinkholes for at least a good month or two after, because the water in the pipes just finds its way outside the pipes and just takes material from around the pipe, usually in the road, thus creating all these little sinkholes that we have to go back out and repair. And they really nickel and dime us. And we did also look into the option of possibly going conventional dig on this. And that portion of Sand Hill, and I'm sure all know it well, it's a hill section, heavy commuter traffic, lots of heavy truck traffic going to the industrial park there. It's just not a very friendly construction site. This option, although it does come out of a bit of a premium, definitely that premium and all the negatives going full on conventional dig outweigh that extra cost to do this work. So.
Is what happened on Densmore? Where the pipe just eroded from underneath and.
Yeah. Any metal pipe, any metal you stick in the ground. I don't think some of this stuff doesn't have that much potential. We don't have a Indian brook going through them, but it would impact our infrastructure, our road infrastructure, and potentially cause hazards to the traveling public, definitely.
Vince, go ahead.
Yeah. What's the, I guess, projected lifetime of the slip lining versus conventional dig and replace? Like, what does this buy us as far as like years, decades, or is it? Yeah.
It's pretty comparable to actual conventional dig and full pipe replacement. Essentially, what you're doing is inserting a bag into the pipe. And they expand it and they fill it up, add some chemicals and accelerants and throw some steam in there, and it kind of cures in place. So essentially you're lining the pipe and you're creating a new pipe, and industry standards are telling us that, we're going to get a good 50-year design life out of this.
Okay, any other questions? I see one hand up in the public. Go to the public for comment. It's good. Any staff? Any more staff
No.
questions? Okay.
Staff's in favor of this.
Sorry, what?
We were in favor of this.
Yeah. Okay. Andy Champagne.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
I was just curious, why did you pick the Green Mountain Pipeline? How'd that process come about?
We've used them in the past, and quite honestly, it's a pretty specialized type of work. They did offer us this quote back this spring. There are other companies regionally. We had no return calls. It's a tough market right now. I know just talking with a lot of contractors, their plates and their schedules are full. There was a lot of work that was held back from last summer that is now starting to see the light of day, and contractors are hard to find and pretty scarce these days. So when you find a specialized contractor like this and they have availability and they can get you on the schedule, you kind of have to jump.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Andy. I guess lost the meeting. Let's look and see if there's any other hands. I don't see any other public hands. Patty has typed something into the chat. Okay, she's saying, I remember Dennis Lutz saying it would be stupid to pave over pipes that need to be replaced in such a busy area. Right. Okay, thanks, Patty. My question, I guess, is looking at the recommendation, there are a couple of ifs in there. Do we need to resolve any of those ifs tonight, or is this worded such that staff can move forward with it without having to readdress this question in the future?
I'm comfortable with the recommendation as is. It gives staff the flexibility to find the funding.
Okay, any concerns from select board members about how the recommendation is worded?
No.
All right. Okay, let me quickly look to see if there's any other hands up in the public. I don't see any. Any other comments or questions from the board? Somebody willing to make a motion? Go ahead, Tom.
I recommend that the select board authorize Public Works to move forward with slip lining the stormwater pipes on the lower portion of Sand Hill Road. 2, contract with Green Mountain Pipeline Services to perform the services at the earliest available date. And 3, to approve the assignment of any surplus FY21 end of year Public Works General Fund dollars to this project, or alternatively assign any of the surplus end of year Public Works General Fund dollars to the Stormwater Capital account for this project, if such funds are available, as determined by the Finance Director. If such funds are not available, the needed funding will become available FY22 Highway account in combination with funds from the Capital account.
Okay, thank you, Don. You said you recommend, I think you mean you move.
I move that.
Okay, thank
Select
you.
board.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thanks, Vince. Any other discussion? All those if not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Good night,
Thanks.
Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Welcome. Thank you.
Alrighty, moving on to the next item of business. 5C, discussion and potential action about public forums regarding future of town governance in regards to village independence effort. Greg or Evan?
Greg's got this one
Sure.
to start.
So as staff has thought about how the town might proceed, town of Essex, corporate entity, municipality, the town of Essex might proceed in response to the village's separation independence efforts, thinking about how it'd be nice to hear from your residents to help the select board make a decision and give some guidance, get some guidance on what your residents are looking for in terms of how to respond to that, whether it's to support the independence effort, to try something different, to just get some feedback and have some ideas. So we reached out to Jen Nauer, who facilitated your strategic planning session. She's done some other work for Essex in the past around the firearms ordinance, some other facilitation for the boards. She's not from Essex, so she really has no dog in the fight whatsoever. She's from out of town. But she's been great for us to work with in the past, and she is interested and willing to help out with this project, should you choose to move forward with it. She has some availability this summer, probably July and August, but to organize a few public forums. We can discuss tonight, get some more details if you're interested in this and what you might be looking for and how to go forward. Staff's thought is to have some questions about what do residents want. Merger failed twice at the polls. Why? No one's ever asked why, as far as I can tell. Was it because the two parts of town want nothing to do with each other? Were they not satisfied with the merger plan as presented? We don't know. And maybe your constituents have told you otherwise, but as staff, we think you might be too. Regardless of why merger failed, what direction do your residents want you to take? And I'm townwide, village, inside, outside the village. Where do we want to go? Also, the independence effort may not be successful, whether it's a local vote or whatever passes locally and goes down to the state legislature. It's going to have to go through the rounds in Montpelier and get approval there from the state, which is not a guarantee. So if that falls through for any reason, what direction do the residents want the town of Essex to take, including the village of Essex Junction? But for your purposes, representing the town of Essex as the select board, what else can be done? Can the town continue to make efforts towards tax equity? Can it work on representation issues? Is there something else that we just haven't heard and missed? But as the village is going through its process, as the select board decides how to support that or work with that, or what direction you want to take, this is hopefully a good opportunity to hear from your residents, your constituents, and get some direction and guidance as to how you want to respond. Happy to try to take questions or have a discussion about it.
That's great. Any board member comments, questions, concerns, complaints, compliments?
I just don't know why we wouldn't want to do this. I mean, that's not an actual question. It's rhetorical.
Right.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Any?
The funding comes from where?
Likely out of the select board's professional services budget. If that's not something you're comfortable with, we can look at the manager's budget as well for fiscal year 22.
I have no problem with it.
Okay. Any other comments, Vince or Pat?
I have concerns about the timing. Whether, I mean, we've already talked about how much stuff we have to do over the next couple of months. And then we're inviting the Secretary of State to another meeting. And then we're potentially having Jen Nauer come for multiple meetings. And while we're not setting the timetable for November, the trustees are, I'm wondering if this stretches into August and we as a select board are holding off on hearing from our residents. Does that give us only September, October to go back to the trustees? Not that, I mean, there's parts of this that I really want us to address, and that I feel that we absolutely need to. Like, what do we do if we lose the 42%? Like, I really do want to know about, what our residents want to do if the legislature doesn't pass their plan. Like, that's critical information. Some parts of this I'm not sure. I worry about the buy-in, I guess. If village residents are already moving towards independence, which they kind of are sort of all in. That's the perspective I'm hearing quite a bit. I don't know how many of them are going to want to participate in, let's have a listening session to hear about why merger didn't pass or not. So I guess there's parts of this that I really do want to hear about, but I'm concerned about timing, and I kind of want to make sure that it's, if we do move ahead with this, that we kind of make a speedy effort so that we're not left, kind of holding the bag in September, waiting on, these meetings to finish up before we can go to the trustees and say, this is what we've heard from our residents and what they want to do with police. I just want to make sure it's done before that, so we can have, discussions with the trustees and really follow through with those. But other than that, yeah, like Tracey mentioned, there's stuff in here that we absolutely need to know the answers to. So.
And my preference would be more forward-looking, like you mentioned, rather than, rehashing merger again. What do you see as the vision of the future town of Essex under a separate situation if separation fails? But let's be forward-looking and plan for what we want and get feedback on what we want to be.
Right. So rather than looking at all the gyrations of what went wrong, look at what might make it work better in the future.
That would be my focus. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's a good point. Vince, any thoughts?
I like what Tracey and Pat have kind of laid out. I think looking forward is definitely a better way to go about it, just from like a community mental health perspective. And I think, giving, like, maybe posing questions to people about, like, well, if separation is successful, how do you see the town of Essex? If it's not successful, how do you see the town of Essex? So you're giving people these two kind of choices, because something's going to happen. We're either going to stay a town, either going to stay one town, or we're going to separate. And maybe posing that question to the public and asking them, like, what is your vision if we separate and if we don't separate? That way we can kind of gauge like what the public would like to see.
There's also an interim piece, right? So if separation does go forward, we still have at least, I think, 2 budget cycles to go through, and I think there's going to be, we need to understand what, whether to continue with tax equity work or not, or in which areas to look at, and I think there's 3 pieces to it. The other thing I think I don't know the village's schedule in detail, but I don't think they're expecting to look at public comment until September either, so I don't know if.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the timeline is necessarily, but I mean, they did bring, last week the idea of what departments they want to share, and we hadn't even met yet. So, my feeling, is that they're more accelerated, certainly, than we are. And we'll go at our own pace, obviously, but, I think that if we narrow down our focus on this to, like Tracey said, what's going to benefit us, is looking forward, looking to the future, looking at, what's good for Essex going forward, and less about, looking back into why merger didn't fail. How do you feel about, what could have happened? I feel like that's maybe just rehashing stuff that is really inconsequential almost at this point. The key information that we need is, how do we move forward?
So I guess go ahead, Greg. You got a comment?
Sure.
Yeah. I was gonna.
Good feedback. Thank you all for that. Just to respond to a couple things, to get staff's point of view and make sure we're clear and on the same page. For the dates of the forums, we were thinking outside of a normal select board meeting, so it doesn't detract from your normal work, whether that's a Saturday, an evening or 2, something like that. So hopefully that'll help. Still work to do, but hopefully it's not going to be all packed into 1 or 2 select board meetings. The second piece is, and Tracey, thank you for framing it of forward looking. my thought of looking back towards why did merger fail, I didn't necessarily mean it to be a negative piece or let's rehash our wounds, but what do people want? For years, we talked about governance and efficiency and how what the community can get out of coming together. And so, forward looking, what was not in that plan? What do people want that wasn't there? And again, I like the way you're framing it, but just to put some more context into it as to where we were coming from of what do people want? What's going to make this town successful, whether it's as 20,000 people or 10,000 people. So, thanks.
And Greg, you just said something very interesting that I really don't want to lose. I think it's important to vary the meeting times and dates. So like you said, a Saturday morning, maybe a weekday evening or an afternoon, just to give folks options to attend and take part.
We talked about that. Not everybody is available at 6:30 at night on a Wednesday or a Monday, right? So, you know, some people want a Saturday, but whatever time you pick, it will probably be wrong. But we do want to vary the times so that people who are different stages, different places, but we definitely do want a weekend day as well in there.
Perfect. Thank you.
So the other thing that Pat mentioned was the staff had bandwidth to support this, you know, given, you know, the strategic meeting we had of other priorities that are there.
So we look at this as a way to help our bandwidth.
Yeah. Okay.
Once we start getting the public input to give to you, it should actually narrow the focus of what to do. The village, which I work for as well, they are going in a direction. They seem to have a focus. They're asking you about your participation in that process and what's going to. You're asking the citizens of the entire town about that process and that vision. We have the bandwidth. Is, you know, again, it's not a full agenda. It's one item. We're running a forum. The work is in setting up the room, setting up the virtual hybrid, however we're going to do it, and getting that done. But we think ultimately it will help with our work.
The other question I have is who's going to put together the content, the format of the meeting. We can ask Jen to do that for us, or how do we?
Yes. No, I mean, Jen's the expert. She's the professional in terms of moderation, facilitation. She'd be working with staff to work through what are we trying to get out of it. Certainly, this is just the start of the conversation. Hopefully, call us, send us emails, stuff you want to see on there, and we're happy to work with Jen to try to make it happen. Yeah, the goal is to hopefully keep these things to an hour and a half, 2 hours. We'll see who shows up. But just to get that feedback and get some guidance and work with Jen. Hopefully she can get a report to the select board by late August, maybe. Again, we can work out some of these details, but to give you some feedback and guidance within the semi-near future to help you with your decision making.
So you're asking the board to send you specific items that they would like to see addressed or covered somehow in this, and then Jen would figure out how to work that in. Is that the?
I think so.
Okay.
If there's anything in particular, and sure.
Is there?
But it's her job to weave it in.
Yeah, right. You're not asking us to, and I would agree that you don't want us to ask to edit the content that's being, or the narrative, or however it's going to be put together. I had another question and I've lost it.
Could we
Go
have
ahead, Pat.
Jen touch base with the equity group to have her reach out specifically so that we, get some of our, more diverse and active members of our community who are, already in the process of being involved. I think that, just something that I'm remembering that we want to kind of have as an umbrella, that topic during our Saturday meeting, try to apply that to as much as we can.
I'm just watching the hands go up on the.
Yeah.
Someone's
Sorry.
gonna stall for Andy so he can come up with this question.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe I'll think of it.
Reserve the right to come back.
Yeah, I'll reserve the right to come in. We'll circle back to the board before we finish the topic anyway. Any other board comments or questions? Okay. Let's see. Brian Sheldon is up with the presenters, so I can't tell if his hand was up first, but since he's at the top of my list, I'm going to let him go first. Go ahead, Brian.
Can you hear me, Chair Watts?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm a little bit curious and disappointed about the need for feedback on whether Essex Junction independence goes through or not. First, in my personal opinion, independence is much more likely than this discussion implies. Unless the members of the board are talking to different folks in the legislature than I am, the strategy of hoping that independence will be rejected by the ledge is wishful thinking. Second, even if I'm wrong, which is possible, of course, there's a timing issue. Independence will likely happen earlier than you can even get the results from a bunch of public hearings. The public has spoken. Essex wants separation. The village voted clearly for separation, and the TOV in April knew very well that a vote for merger was a vote against merger was a vote for independence. It's time to plan for independence. Ms. Delphia frequently says, and I agree with her, that failure to plan is planning to fail. It's time to prioritize planning for independence, not anything else. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I see Andy Champagne.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So yeah, I'm a village resident, and I'm a hard no for separation. My question is why is the select board even talking to the town? Because from my opinion, that they do not have any authorization to do that. There was no vote. There was no. I don't understand. The town of Essex didn't vote for that, so they shouldn't be even talking to the village, in my opinion. And then I'm also curious about how the money is. Why is the town required to spend time and money to deal with this separation thing when they didn't even
Andy,
want
the topic we're talking about is having a public session to hear comments. Our discussion here isn't the merits of whether separation is an appropriate thing to move forward with. Are your comments relative to the discussion we want to have with the town residents?
Okay, so the reason why I voted no is because I saw it as a power grab, and there's a huge power struggle going on in the village for whatever reason. Yeah. I go back.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks, Andy. Betsy Dunn.
Thank you, Andy. Well, just to support Andy Champlain, when Patrick was talking about it, he was talking about how the select board needs to move forward because the trustees have asked us to get this answer to them about the rec department and parks and the police. So I think that there was a little confusion there for him on that as well. And for me, the need for the forums would be a good idea to talk about what we do want, because I do believe the charter needs to be adjusted. Maybe we don't have to write a whole new charter, but I firmly believe that we do not need to give them any answer in the next 4 months about what we're going to do with the police department, even longer, and the Parks, Recreation, and all the other shared items that they wanted to do and not share any of the other ones and just give those up, because we have until 2024 when those budgets
So
have to be out.
Bessie, again, the discussion here is about having a public forum to have a discussion.
And I do agree, having it looking forward, as Tracy said, I think is a good idea.
Okay. Thank you. Our intent is to represent the best interests of the town as an entity, the whole town. Okay, thank you. Aaron Dickinson?
Hello, sorry, you're gonna hear kids crying in the background. Thank you for, by the way, allowing people like me to still attend these meetings. I think it's great to hear from the town and get some feedback as you look forward. I think though, you have been given a timeline for November, I just really, as a town resident who's been watching these meetings for the last year and a half, I just hope that regardless of that timeline you've given, that you do continue to listen to the public and be very thoughtful in your stewardship of how this separation goes. It's much easier to plan and do everything right than it is to hastily get to that point of separation and then have to backtrack and fix things. So I'm glad that you're planning to hopefully hear from the public, and I do hope that you keep your cadence and not feel that you have to be rushed into making these decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Rachel Lazat?
Hi there. I just wanted to say that while I appreciate the reframing and I agree that there is a need for positivity, I also think that there is a huge need to hear from residents about why this failed. There was so much misinformation during this vote that it would be an extreme disservice to not let the public be heard on this issue. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Let's see. I think I saw George Tyler. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I think that having your public forums is a good idea. I think what I'm about to say, I believe is relevant to this, but I think it's a good idea to have these forums. But I think the framework and how you approach this is absolutely necessary. And this concerns another part of the agenda item, which says that the town serves 22,000 people. And I think this is a piece of information that is highly debatable. And I think this is relevant to your forums. The town does not serve 22,000 people, okay? The village has its own ordinances, its own planning and zoning infrastructure. We do all of our own economic development, community development.
George, this isn't a
No, this is complete. No, Andy, let me just please finish. Please, let me just allow me to finish, Andy. Okay? Because the reason this is relevant, it goes to the other pieces of your forum. And the reason is this. People in the town believe that the town is the great benevolent provider of municipal services, and it is not. And by implication, that says the village services are not important and are frivolous. And people in the town believe this. You need to clarify that before you go into forums. I've urged you in the past to approach merger the same way the school districts did. Every school district was respected for what it brought to the table. People in the town didn't say, we have a middle school here in the town already.
So
why does the village need one?
It's about the public forums coming up.
Please, that's the forum. I'm telling you, I'm saying that I think your forum is a good idea, but only if it's done within the right framework. Okay? And you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've got to pop these myths and tell the people in the town the truth. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, George. Okay, Andy, you already spoke once. Is that your hand up again, or is it your previous? I'll defer you.
I have something more to say.
I'll let others speak. Who haven't yet spoken first? Okay.
Let's go.
Mary Post.
Hi. I want to be as positive as I can. I really love the fact that maybe the public will be heard. Historically, I don't believe we've been listened to at all. Over all these years, I have attended more meetings than I can count, more Saturday day-long things. And when the reports come out, they never really include what was talked about by the people. It always was focused on what the leadership, the select board or the trustees want. And I feel like just listening to the person who just spoke before me now, that kind of gives you an idea of what it's been like for us. We just spent $50,000 during the merger vote to be listened to, and we were not listened to. So to be positive, I think it's a great idea. I want to know, what can you tell me about how you're going to do things differently so that we know we're going to be heard? A suggestion I have is that when all the information comes in, that the report not be written by anybody that's on the select board or the trustees, that it be written by someone who is independent, so that you don't have somebody, like we were told after the $50,000 debacle, what the response was when it actually wasn't. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Annie Cooper.
I'm in 1,000,000% agreement with George Tyler. I did not appreciate, Andy, that you cut George off. I think it was very valid and important for him to say those things. If you, as the select board, do not manage how this information, it is of great importance that the select board take the reins on what information is being believed and understood out in the community. You cannot sit impassively while misinformation flies around. It is not okay anymore. I will not personally stand for it any longer. It is past due time for the select board to stand up and combat misinformation. So these hearings must absolutely not allow the constant and incessant misinformation to be stated. If I come up here and say every day, if every meeting I come to or every public hearing I come to, I say Chair Delphia, sorry, Tracey, Chair Delphia, and Andy, you have to constantly correct me that Tracey's not the chair. That's crazy town. I can't keep saying the wrong thing. And then we keep living through that to the point of where people start to think that Tracey's the chair because I keep repeating it. So during the public hearings, we need to remember that we're all the town, that those who live in the village are the town. We need to make sure that when we refer to the town, we mean all of us. And if we're talking about who the town's going to be after separation, that's clear too. So if we're not providing correct information and we're not combating misinformation, we're not doing our town a service. So I agree with George wholeheartedly. Please make it clear about how services function. And separation does not have to be decided by the town. So I think the public hearing should be more of discussion about what these pieces would be about the rec department, the police, and those things, and less about whether or not the town is not going to decide separation, the village is. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, let's see. There've been a couple of comments in the chat. Should I? Anything in there that we need to read aloud? Patty, you still don't have the ability to unmute.
Adam Newhart had his hand up earlier.
Yeah, there's a couple of hands, but I've been seeing these chat messages pop up too, and I didn't want to ignore them. Patty, Patty asked me to read what she typed in here, so I'll go ahead and do that. She says, people here do not want another vote on merger ever. They're angry. They want village to leave the town. Patty, I don't think this is relevant to our discussion of having public forums, so I'm going to skip the rest of that. Next one's about representation. This is good input, but it's not relevant to our having the forums. Okay, so Patty, I read your comments and I'm a little, they're not germane to our discussion about having public forums. You've got opinions in there that you might want to express about the topics that may come up in that forum, but the discussion is not about the forum itself. So I will forego reading all of that. Let's see who else is up. Adam Newhart.
Hey, thank you. I just wanted to take the time. I do appreciate the opportunity for us to have forums just to get input on where we want to see the future of the town. I also do want to second Rachel's comment. I don't know how we would do it in a constructive way and kind of get a vibe about the us versus them scenarios that are going on with these discussions and these comments right now. But I do think it's important to find some sort of constructive way to discuss how we got here, or at least to discuss and understand what people understood about where we came from in order for us to figure out how we want to move forward, regardless of if separation occurs or not. So thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Andrew Brown.
Thank you, Andy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. I agree that the forums are a good idea. I mean, anytime that we can hear from the community, anytime we can hear from the residents, it's always a valuable thing to do. And I would commend the process in doing so. I would, again, to spare time, I would agree with what you've already heard about concerns of misinformation and how to really combat that in the moment instead of allowing them to fester. And I'm not talking about in these meetings, but in those forums that you have. If there's any way to combat the misinformation then and there, I think that would help to prevent the spread of those continuing. I would also just say that in terms of this process, I think Pat had said this earlier, as long as this does not cause any kind of a delay in the discussions that I think you're about to have an executive session about how the town select board and village trustees could talk about police and parks and rec moving forward. As long as there's no negative impact with that, then certainly a great thing. Because as Annie had said, we have that timeline of November, and that's already pretty firmly set. The last thing I would say is there was a question before about public comment in the separation timeframe. Officially, we're taking public comment as we go. We have surveys that we are seeking feedback in after all of our work sessions. But if you're talking about once we have a final plan and sort of that public hearing process on the final plan, that's not going to be until August or September, but again, taking public comment as we go forward. So there's no time better than the present because, as we all know, if you wait too late in the process to have your opinion heard, by that point in time, may not be able to be acted upon. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Gabrielle Smith.
Hi, thanks, Andy. I think that these forums are less about positivity and general sort of future seeking, but it should be very focused. Your staff has given you information they're proposing that you want to learn from residents. And I would suggest that the forums be designed in such a way for that information to be gathered. And I want to really reiterate how critical it is for our community going forward that these both the forums but also each of you really be mindful of ensuring that the public has accurate information. And one of the things I'm going to request of all of you is to stop clarifying who we are within the town of Essex. I don't want to be called someone who lives inside the village or outside the village. For your purposes, when you say the town of Essex or someone who lives in the town, enough said. I don't ever hear you clarifying if a person lives in Lang Farms or Essex West, or the town is the town. And you shouldn't have to clarify that you're also talking about me and people who live in this part of town. We all live in the town. And I think it's reinforcing the sense that the town is actually the part of this community where that doesn't include the village of Essex. And we all know that to be false. And so it would be helpful. I would sure appreciate it. It would help me feel more included that the town is the town and we're all members and residents of the town of Essex. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Let's see. Next, I see Bruce Post.
Hi, thank you very much. Just quickly, having studied now different separation events that have gone through the legislature, including the Winooski thing in 21, the Brattleboro thing a few years later. I spent a lot of time studying the 1999 vote, and I guess we had 11 or 13 mediation sessions, and that failed. I think one aspect of any forum looking forward is what would a new town of Essex look like? What would we want it to look like if the village is successful in separating? We will be the people left behind. And in many of those legislative endeavors where, for instance, they talked about the city of Winooski, the legislature also talked about the new town of Colchester, which Winooski was pulling out of. So I think we should not be reactive. I think we should be forward thinking. We don't have to, if separation goes through and the legislature approves it, I would hope we would have done some thinking ahead of time as to what the remainder of this community would look like, and not wait until then. Let's do some downward thinking. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Let's see. Andy, you spoke before. Andy Champagne, do you have a additional quick comment?
I'll let everybody else go before me.
Let's see. I don't see anybody else who has.
I see 3 hands.
Andy,
2 hands.
audience.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. Go ahead. Yes, come up to the microphone, please, Irene. Irene Renner.
Thank you. I would just like to address a couple of the things that I've just heard. First of all, misinformation has come from the highest levels of staff and elected officials.
So, Irene, this is the discussion about
Yes,
the
so
forums that we're going to have.
I think it's important that
you're
if
on
we're
that
going to
topic.
call out misinformation during those forums, it's very hard to call out that misinformation if you're someone who believes something that's not true.
Staff did not bring out any misinformation.
Agreed.
I just want you to know that.
Here, here.
I'll put it in writing to you up later. Thank you.
I look forward to it.
To Gabrielle's comment, I'm fine with her contributing to these forums as a town resident, but I also want her to
The rebuttal?
she's working on separation. I heard earlier that people did not understand why merger didn't pass.
His rebuttal?
Irene,
Yes.
Somebody's interrupting. Can we? Can I mute them? Irene, are you talking about the forums that we're going to have?
I am. And I was told that part of the reason you might have them is because you wanted to understand why merger didn't pass.
Right. We'll have those discussions during that forum. This is not
Yes.
a forum. This is
I'm not going
that.
to explain to you why
not-
merger didn't pass.
Excuse me, Irene, this is not the discussion about why merger didn't pass. This is a discussion about having a forum to discuss that. I know it's an interest.
And I'm addressing why I think you should or shouldn't have a forum to discuss why merger didn't pass. Is that correct?
Proceed.
Those who fail to study history are doomed to repeat it. Like your predecessors on the select board, all the people I've served with, the people who served on the select board before and since I've been on the board, have not wanted to look back. It's difficult to look back, but I would urge you to at least look back to recent surveys and votes. And even if you just look back to 2020, when Andy came back from the polls and told his peers, the town outside the village residents are telling me there's nothing in the merger for them. That's really great feedback for you to go forward with and to hear again from people because the select board couldn't hear it the first time. You could also, as another person mentioned, look at the merger survey results for which $50,000 was spent in the summer of 2019. You could also look back at the day-long public session that we had in 2018, which Jen Nauer very skillfully navigated people came forth and many notes were taken and presented back to the select board. And I swear the select board and trustees buried that faster and sooner than Jen herself could have been paid by the town for conducting that. It's not the gathering of the information that's the problem. It's the fact that people hear things they don't want to hear, don't want to believe them, and then bury that input. We have plenty of input from very recent years telling us why things like merger wouldn't pass and then didn't pass, why separation will likely fail, why the rec district didn't pass in 2016. And I challenge you not to go gathering new data, but to discover all over again, or maybe for the first time, that information, because those people mostly still live here throughout the town, that information is still relevant. And finally, the town should be voting on whether or not to let the village separate. So please consider looking into that
Irene,
and discussing that.
Excuse me, Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks, Irene. Only the chair should interrupt speakers, please. Okay, thanks, Irene. I see a number of hands up that have been up before. I don't want to get into a back and forth.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible to just move this along for a vote?
Yeah, I guess we could bring it back to the board at this point again, because everyone has, you know, there's no one with their hand up that hasn't spoken before. And I don't want to get into a back and forth or an argument between members of the public. So I guess the question is, are you looking for any kind of action from us tonight, or just the okay to go forward? Do you want a motion or something, or what is it you're looking? What is it the staff's looking?
Motion to go forward, please. That's
I'll
what we're looking.
Authorization for staff to work with Jennifer Nauer to start scheduling and planning the forums.
So have you asked for is there a memo with a recommendation in it?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure where we're headed, and then, okay, back to the, going to come back to the board. Any comments based on what's been heard from the public, or any comments to me about how I handled it?
I'd like to go ahead with the staff's recommendation to do these public forums.
Any other comments?
I don't hear any new comments, so I'm going to move that the select board authorize staff to organize facilitated public forums this summer to hear from residents on the topics of village independence and the future of governance in Essex.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Don. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you. Get back to where I was. Okay, moving on to the next. The next business item is will be an executive session. Well, we'll have an executive session at the end of the meeting actually we have 2 executive sessions at the end of the meeting. The second one will be discussion about the village proposal. Okay, moving on to consent. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that the select board approves the consent agenda.
Thanks, Vince. For a
Second.
second. Thank you, Don. Any discussion about anything in the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Consent agenda passes 5-0. Moving on to the reading file. Any select board comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank, excuse me just a minute, Christine Hammer and Diana Woods for their long-term service on the Conservation and Trails Committee, and to congratulate the Cemetery Committee on the award that they were presented last Saturday.
Thank you, Don.
I actually was approached by a friend of mine who works at Spare Time in Colchester. It's only relevant because I guess on June 29th is Municipal Employee Day, where municipal employees can go to get free bowling at Spare Time. So I thought I'd mention it. That staffers, if who are feeling up for it, or want to, send some of your people over. Anyone who's a municipal employee of any of the towns in the area can go to spare time and
Yeah.
get a free game under their belt.
I think we got an email to that effect.
And I just want to echo comments made earlier about the Juneteenth celebration on Saturday. Very well attended. I was impressed that there were so many people there and it went off so well, especially with the limited time frame that they had to plan. It was great. So thanks to staff and the equity task force, the school district, the students that took part, everybody who performed or read a card. It's a great event.
And Luisa
Yeah.
Mapuco really deserves tons and tons of credit for pulling the whole thing together and organizing it.
Yep.
With all that volunteer help.
Awesome job.
That's exactly what I was going to say. But thank you to the public for coming out. Thank you for the committee's work. Thank for all the volunteers. It was so moving to hear the people speak and talk about the community. It's a gentleman who said he'd moved here, feels welcome, but willing to work, knows the work isn't done.